Hello, my sweet friends. Welcome back to the Home to Self podcast. It has been a little while. It has been a little while since I got in front of the mic and hit record, and especially for a solo episode, which is what you'll be hearing today. And it feels really good to be back. Something that I have struggled with that you may be able to relate with just before we dive into the theme of this episode is, so to speak, falling off the wagon. And then the longer that time expands between falling off per se and then restarting, it's like the longer that in between time expands, the harder it feels to restart. Whether that's a habit in your life, like working out or eating healthy or whatever it may be, it's just like once you get going, there's that consistency. But the moment that it kind of falls to the wayside, it's harder to pick it back up when you let that sit and simmer for a little too long. And that's kind of how I felt with the podcast. But at the end of the day, and what feels really fitting for today's theme is the truth that what matters most is not how long you let things go, but really the process of coming back, of learning through all of it and embracing all of it, really, as part of the experience, as part of the journey, as part of your evolution. Which leads me beautifully into the theme of this episode and the conversation that I want to have with you today, which is all around embracing the fullness of your human experience, recognizing that healing is not about perfection. It's not about becoming this best version of yourself. It's really about becoming more whole. And what I mean by that is really coming to terms and this emotional maturity that happens through this evolution of learning how to embrace the full spectrum of your humanity. Something that I say all the time is that we are both human and spirit, right? We are a soul that is boundless, limitless, timeless. And then we are also in these human bodies here having this human experience. And so through that intersection of soul and human, it's like we are bound to come with our flaws, with shadows, with limiting beliefs that we're here to work through. We're here to fall and get back up and learn the lessons along the way. If we were just perfect all the time, there would be no human experience. There would be no fun, right? You would never watch a movie that has no conflict, that has no climax, something that you're working towards, right? That hero's journey is literally what's playing out in our lives. And so with that perspective in mind, we recognize that the actual process of healing, of becoming, this self-development, this evolution that so many of us are on. I mean, we're all on it, but some are like really committed to the path. And that's what this podcast is obviously about. If you haven't noticed, this journey of coming home to yourself, right? Of growing into your authentic, true self, reaching that potential more and more, that process can only really happen when we actually grow our capacity to be with the fullness of what it means to be human. For so long, I thought that my healing journey was about fixing and healing and overcoming the parts of myself that I deemed less than or, not spiritual enough or not good enough. It's like I saw the flaws and I was like, okay, the journey is about fixing those, getting rid of those and being more, to some degree, perfect, right? Having more good and letting that be the fullness of me. It seems so silly to actually say those words out loud, but I really believe to some degree that's kind of the thought process, right? Why else would we go on this journey if it's not to become a better version of ourselves? And so it's really humbling, but also so liberating to realize that there's actually no perfect version of yourself that you're ever going to reach. That it's actually such a distortion and doing us such a disservice to think of this journey as getting rid of anything, of unbecoming all the bad parts, as if there are bad parts, right? It's like it's this duality that we live in, this reality This human reality that we're in is made up of duality. There is light and there is dark, and you will never have one without the other. You can't. You wouldn't know what light is without the dark. You wouldn't know what dark is without the light, right? And so, understandably, that is also our human nature. So, it is so naive to think that you could possibly only be light. There would be no contrast. There would be no experience to be had, no journey to go on. And so, with this greater realization in mind, the idea here is that, oh, true healing and freedom and liberation and all the things that I am after, right? Because the reason we go on this journey in the first place is because we want the feelings that we think come with that process of healing: the confidence, the love, the authenticity, the self-expression, the freedom, the liberation, the peace, the joy, the ecstasy, right? All those feelings that we are after as human beings, we associate with this path of healing. And that makes sense because that is truth. However, that journey is not about getting rid of the parts that you have deemed bad, wrong, unlovable, dark, but about embracing them. No longer being in resistance to them, fighting them, and trying to get rid of them. That's what causes our suffering, right? Suffering is really a fighting against what is and not wanting things to be as they are. So many of these spiritual teachings teach us that, like, it's through acceptance, it's through surrender that we find that ultimate peace and liberation. So it helps you put things into perspective and realize, oh, actually, maybe the journey is not about changing things and fixing myself. Maybe the reason that I don't feel complete and whole is because I'm still viewing that as bad and wrong and pushing it away and causing it to amplify and get bigger, right? Whatever we resist persists. So any aspects of self that we are still deeming wrong and unlovable and, not willing to look at, those live in the shadows. And then they get bigger and they start causing us to operate in weird ways and hide ourselves and manipulate and perform. And it doesn't feel good, right? We don't feel free. We're still operating from these deeper things that are kind of holding on, that are gripping at us sometimes without us even knowing. So this has been a very deep intro into this podcast. Hopefully you're still with me. But the opening invitation here is really just for us to think about, what if healing isn't about becoming better, but about becoming more of who you truly are? Which leads me to the conversation of, like, what is the difference between, like, what are we aiming for, right? What are we really doing? What are we aiming for? What is this picture perfect, healed version, authentic, free version of you that you are aiming towards? And I think without questioning this, the first idea that comes through for so many people is this idea of being good. And I know this for myself so well because as I have been diving deeper into my own shadows, especially this year through my own life curriculum, I have realized that so much of it has been this identity that I've subconsciously been trying to uphold and play into, because I associated being good, being the light, right? Having my stuff figured out and being kind of this representation of the good girl was associated with love, with belonging, with safety. We all have these primal needs that we are after, and that's really what we like. We will do whatever we think we need to in order to get those needs met. And so this journey, so much of it is discovering, like, what is really my motivation and what have I associated with that? And is that really what I want? Because that, as my intention, caused me to actually hide parts of myself, to distort even in the subtlest ways, right? To just act a little bit better than I am, or hide parts that I'm like, maybe this isn't as acceptable. all these little ways that we shapeshift in order to fit this mold, in order to try and get those needs met. But really what that does is it disconnects us. It disconnects us from ourselves for sure, because you know that that's not fully true. And you are creating so much disconnect between you and parts of yourself that are there. Like the part of you that is scared of losing love, or the part of you that thinks you're not enough. These are still parts of us. And so the more that we push those away, the more we feel disconnected from ourselves. And so then there is that void internally. There's that anxiousness inside of us. And that is an obstruction and an obstacle in the way towards us being authentic, feeling free and liberated. Because true freedom is having nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Like, think about how comfortable in your own skin you would be, how soft you would feel, and how powerful at the same time you would walk through life if you genuinely felt like you had nothing to prove and nothing to hide. Like you were totally at peace with who you are. And again, the way to do that isn't because you have gotten somewhere where it's now acceptable. All parts of you are exactly as they should be. All parts of your life are presentable, and therefore you're totally at peace with who you are. That is such an illusion. Like, name one person who is there. That's just, you would completely lose the whole point of being human if that were actually an attainable goal. And so it makes us question, okay, like, well, then what actually does bring peace? What brings that true confidence, that true power, where we don't have to prove ourselves? We don't have to be louder or softer than we actually are. We can just be exactly as we are in the moment, as we ebb and flow. What is it that causes that peace then, if it's not us suddenly being perfect or our lives being perfect? And this comes back to the beginning. It is embracing all of ourselves, not being in conflict with any part of our human experience. And that takes a bigger human being. That takes a lot of emotional maturity to be able to sit with the light and the dark. You know, it's one thing to say that. I used to say that all the time. And like, to some degree, like, you know, you only know what you know. It's only when you meet these parts deeper that you're like, oh, that is actually a lot bigger than what I thought it was, right? So like saying like all of you is welcome here and I embrace all of it and I am available for all of it. That's something that I've said for a long time, and I meant it. But this year I'm like, oh, that's a lot bigger than what I thought it was, right? Can I hold it? Can I actually hold it? And first and foremost, it's learning how to hold that within myself without running away, to really see these parts of yourself that are maybe slightly manipulative, slightly distorted, deeply afraid, hurt. And then they are coming out in ways that just feel icky, that feel like, ooh, that's not acceptable. And to be able to stay and still say, you know what? I can make space for all of it because I'm human. There is no human on this planet that doesn't carry both light and dark. And when we release the shame around thinking that we should be different, or the stories that we have associated with these parts of us because we don't understand them, so much of our shame and our judgment, which causes us to push things away, suppress, hide, distort ourselves, the reason that it feels so hard to really embrace these parts of ourselves is because we're still judging them. We still have shame around them. And the reason the shame and the judgment is there is because we don't fully understand the parts. And that is why this work that I do, this coming home to yourself, this revealing of the subconscious and the patterns and the pieces that are literally in the dark, but still controlling your life, is such a transformative process. Because what you come to realize is that every single pattern of yours and the pieces that you don't like are trying to protect you from something. They are not malicious, meaning you are not bad and you are not broken. They are there because at some point they served your survival before you knew better. And they came online for good reason, because they were trying to protect you from something, usually some type of hurt. or a belief that you might get hurt, right? Or you might not be okay. And this is all created in childhood before we know better. But when we don't understand where something is coming from, it's really easy to beat ourselves up. So again, the process of healing, of finding true confidence, of being exactly who you are authentically, and then creating a life from that place, which by the way is going to be the most fulfilling and the most successful, because you're literally in flow. There's no blockages between you and life. You just are moving in flow and synchronicity. In order to do that, it's like coming home to all parts of us. And it takes some self-discovery work, some digging in the trenches, even if you don't like what you find in there, and learning and understanding each and every part of these pieces of your humanity, these pieces that make up who you are, at least on a human level, so that you can accept them and work with them. And the more you do that, the more everything softens. Let me share an example from my own life to bring this in and make it a little more practical for you. But this year has been such a massive year of self-growth. Like, so much in my real life has pushed me to meet myself deeper and saying yes to opportunities that really push my comfort zone. And that's usually where we are able to meet ourselves deeply. And that is where we have the opportunity to grow, to heal, to transform, to become more of who we're here to become. And so I love to jump into the fire. And this year has been so expansive. And the reason it's been so expansive is because it's also come with so much struggle and such a confronting path of meeting myself and my shadows that I honestly didn't even realize were there. And through this process, I've realized a lot of things, but one of my patterns that I've deeply been confronted with, and it's been uncomfortable, is this part of me that hides and even distorts truth to protect myself. And there's identities that we form over the years, like the good girl, where we want to be seen in a certain light because we think it's gonna be the thing that brings us the most love and acceptance, and we all just want to belong. But it comes out sometimes as people pleasing or perfectionism or performance, and all these sneaky ways that, I mean, for this example, can seem very, so careless, and I care so much about other people, and I just want to be good and whatnot. But it's really blocking us in so many ways, and it is a shadow aspect of self that is an invitation to go deeper so that we can actually liberate ourselves and be more authentic. And so for me, as I started digging this through my own psyche and trying to get to the root of, like, where does this come from? Why do I still have this pattern that comes up in the moment where, like, if I'm confronted with a hard conversation and there's an opportunity for me to speak an uncomfortable truth, oftentimes I feel my body go into such fight or flight. And for me, it feels like a freeze response where my subconscious pattern, which acts from a place of fear, thinking that if I tell the truth in this moment, if I let myself be seen in what I feel is wrong or bad or not upholding this version of me that I think is acceptable, I will be rejected. I will be abandoned. I won't be safe. I won't be loved. And so that pattern is so deeply ingrained from childhood that my body and my subconscious react and respond before my rational mind can even intervene. And that is a shadow that I've had to look at very closely the past few months. And it's been very uncomfortable to look at, because here I was thinking, oh, I've done so much work on myself, and, like, I'm good. And it's been beautifully humbling and hard, like hard to take that thread and go all the way back and realize, wow, in my childhood, I perceived myself as not being safe because there was moments where emotionally I wasn't safe. There was a lot, especially with my friend group, of, humiliation and outcasting and poking fun and just being the center of the joke for days on end. If I said something stupid, not just me, really any of our friends, like girls, we were ruthless. And I grew up in a small town, and I mean, I don't need to get into the whole details, but like the context of why this pattern came online is so there and so valid. And so at the beginning, when I hadn't yet explored this shadow of mine, I was in such judgment of it. And that's why I was hiding still. Because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I still have this part that is like too afraid to just say the truth. And like, I value integrity so much, and it's such an important part of my life. And authenticity is like telling the truth and being all of yourself and, not hiding and whatnot. And yet here I am. And at times I still just like stay quiet, or I distort the truth, or I don't own all of it. And that's not how I want to be. And so for a while I was judging that, and I was like, what the fuck? But then I dug deeper. And right, this is the invitation to get to a place of having compassion and being able to embrace all of it, because that is also the path to making changes. You can't heal what you hate. You can't change what you're still resisting. So the first step is embracing it. And in order to do that, it really helps to understand where it's coming from, to recognize that it's not malicious, that you're not bad, that you're not broken, that you're not, your machinery is not broken. It's actually so intelligent. And the more that you understand why you are the way you are, the easier it is to accept yourself. I promise. So like I said, with this example, I started to dig and ask myself deeper questions. And this is what I do with clients. It's like in a very loving and gentle way, we start to ask questions that take that thread of what you think is your problem, and you take it all the way back to its root to understand it. And then you can work with it. And so for me, like I said, going back to childhood, it makes so much sense why being authentic felt very unsafe. And again, authenticity is truth. And truth sometimes includes like, hey, these are the nasty thoughts I'm having. These are the ways that I'm scared and I feel vulnerable. Like, it's not just like the good, and authenticity is like your fullest expression. Yeah, but it's all of it. It's your true expression, right? And again, because we're humans and we have all of it, authenticity is being able to be all of who you are. And I was subconsciously still relating true authenticity, all of it. Maybe like 90% of it was like, cool, like I've gotten there, like I've done a lot of work, whatever. However, there's still that 10% that I'm like, not that. I can't actually own that. Therein was my work. And again, you can only do this work when you have compassion for yourself. And that's where you find peace. It's not like, oh, because I've done all the work and I've gotten somewhere that now I'm okay with myself. No, the whole point is you can have that okayness. You can have that like, hey, I've got me through the process of doing this work, because you will be doing this work for the rest of your life in deeper layers. And I know I'm jumping around a lot here, but hopefully you're still with me and recognizing that the beautiful thing is, just to kind of, give some context here, is that the more that you do this, the more you find that liberation and authenticity. And so it's like you the reward is instant and continues to deepen just as much as the work is continuous. So the shadow within myself, and recognizing, okay, there's a part of me that still feels unsafe to speak my full truth especially when it's ugly, and to own that, because I feel, which is valid from childhood, that love is going to be taken away, that I'm not going to be okay, that I'm going to be rejected. And because those are such primal needs, it makes sense that if that's what I'm associating to safety and to getting my needs met, is staying quiet and not revealing all of myself, not being fully honest at times, it makes sense why that pattern came online. Immediately upon knowing that, there's a softening that happens in my body. The judgment dissolves. And it's like, that doesn't take away the self accountability, the self responsibility piece of like, okay, now that you know this, how can you make changes that you want to make? How can you be more responsible? And that invites in the whole next step of the conversation of healing, of actually doing the work. Because one part of it is like, okay, embrace all of yourself, make space for your humanity, notice your shadows, and be okay with them. But we can't just leave it there, because then there's no ownership, there's no actual growth. Awareness alone doesn't create change. I mean, I guess that is, I don't actually believe that. I do believe awareness alone can create change, but it does also require action, right? And so I don't want to leave that out of the conversation, because it is an important aspect of evolving and growing and healing, is like, actually, okay, now that I know this, let me act differently when the opportunity arises. And there's practice that comes in that, because these patterns are so deeply ingrained that they're automatic. And so it takes conscious awareness, noticing, oh, here I am falling back into this old pattern, or like reaching for something that I recognize now what it is. And I don't have to judge it anymore. But now it's like, okay, let me choose differently. And know that it's not going to be perfect. That journey is not going to be perfect. Even if you understand it, you're still gonna fall back into that, because it's deeply ingrained. And so in order to actually become a person who's completely free of that, it takes repetition. It takes continuous coming back, consciously choosing again, even when you fall, do it again, do it again. And eventually that becomes your automatic way of being. And that's when you literally become a different human being. So the process that I'm naming here, and how I really believe healing happens, is, again, recognizing our own patterns and learning how to own them from a place of compassion and, yeah, just curiosity as to like, what is here? Instead of shaming myself and others, like really diving into where is this coming from? What part of me is hurt or scared? And again, it's a younger part usually that created this story of how you're somehow not safe to show all of who you are, to own all of who you are. And so much of what we want as humans is to be fully accepted for who we are. Like, I know for myself, especially when I started to confront these shadows, what I wanted so deeply and I could recognize within myself is like, I just want someone to come tell me that, like, I love you even in these shadows. Like, I all of you is welcome here. And luckily I have such beautiful friends and such an amazing partner that quite literally said those words to me. However, the realization is that, are you doing that for yourself? Because life is such a reflection. People are such mirrors for us and how we relate to ourselves on the inside. And really, that's what we crave most, is our internal acceptance. Because if you fully accept yourself, if you are like, you know what, I know we have stuff to work on, and this pattern, I'm not proud of it, and I still love you, I still accept you, I'm not going anywhere, then other people not doing that for you is much easier to work through. We don't need it as deeply because we have that within ourselves. And so, knowing all of that, I want to invite you into a question of self-reflection, a journal prompt that you can play with and think about to really apply this to your own life, which is asking yourself, what parts of you do you still believe make you unlovable? What parts of yourself are you still hiding in order to try and gain approval, but in that, rejecting parts of yourself and blocking your own freedom? Because being good or upholding this version of yourself that you think you need to be in order to be accepted, that might bring you some approval from some people, but it really does block freedom. Because freedom is built when we are just, again, we have nothing to prove and nothing to hide. There's always more improvement to be made. There's a journey of like, I'm continuously trying to be better, but along the way, I know that it's all part of the human experience. And again, it's recognizing that all of these parts that I'm calling your shadow aspects of self that you have pushed to the side and are hiding still, whether that's insecurity or fear or shame or guilt or anger, anything, they're not bad. Like, none of these parts are bad. They are human. And again, you can't have the light without the dark. So if you want to categorize these as dark, it's recognizing that the darkness is not bad. Everyone's got it as a normal part of this human experience, and we wouldn't, again, know one without the other. It all carries intelligence and wisdom and teachings. But whatever we were rejecting within ourselves, we're either going to suppress and hide, and then again, it's going to come out in these distorted ways. It's going to cause us to feel anxious and unlovable and like not whole, and all of these things within ourselves. And either one, we might project it onto others, which also doesn't feel good. Oftentimes, what we judge in other people is what we still haven't fully owned within ourselves. And that's, I mean, there's so many infinite reasons why doing all this work makes life better. But that's another one. Is like, the more that you accept all parts of you and understand these parts and go on that journey to really soften and allow yourself to be fully human, the easier it is to do that for others. And your relationships get a whole lot deeper and more real and more authentic the more that you become a safe space for other people to be all of themselves. I don't want this to come off as like, well, oh, so someone just gets to be angry and violent and rude, and then we just have to accept them for who they are. No, again, there's that self accountability, there's that responsibility piece. And also, this doesn't mean you can't have boundaries and protect your truth, but two truths can exist at once. And in fact, that's what's happening within you at all times, especially when you're doing the shadow work. You can put up a boundary and walk away from a situation that doesn't feel aligned without making them wrong. You can still accept someone for who they are right now or where they are right now without feeling like you need to engage with them. You can, and in fact, this is the only way, is accept your humanity and at the same time recognize that like there's improvements to be made and go on that journey to actually like heal and do the work to change it. I think so much of emotional maturity and healing and really becoming the person that can hold all of being human and therefore feel whole is being able to hold two truths at once. Recognizing that like when we speak about duality and this human experience, you being both human and spirit, that literally means that it's both and always. And what I say a lot too is like, and what has brought me so much freedom is like, okay, in any moment, I can be feeling two completely different ways. And one doesn't make the other wrong. One doesn't invalidate the other either. Because we are made up of all these different parts. And again, we're human in spirit. Like there's so much going on in any one human being. It's impossible to say you only are this or you only feel this one way in each moment. If you really are honest with yourself and dig a little bit deeper, oftentimes there's both, sadness and joy at the same time. You can have love for someone and still at the same time not want to spend time with them. You can be confident and insecure at the same time. You can trust yourself and still feel, afraid at the same time. Like, it's normal. And can we hold that? Like, I often feel like there's a part of me that is so grounded and that feels so just at peace with my journey, even the parts that, I'm working on and that aren't where I want them to be. Like, I can see the bigger perspective and I can hold that, and I feel in acceptance of it. And at the same time, I don't. There's a part of me that's scared, that's confused, that doubts it all, that doesn't know what to do. And can we hold two truths at once? Can we hold the light and the dark at the same time and not make one of them our entirety of our experience? Not make it mean that this is who we are. If there's any bit of anger in me, then I'm just an angry person. That's what gets us into trouble. That's what blocks us from being able to make space for all of it. Okay, the last piece that I want to talk about and how I really want to bring this all home and really make it practical for you is through breaking down true self-trust, because self-trust is what is needed, and self-acceptance, self-trust, self-love, all this kind of falls into that same umbrella. That's really what's needed in order to do this work. Like that sits at the foundation of any shadow work, of any growth, of any healing, is that connection you have with yourself, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's the way you relate to yourself as you go through this journey, which again is ever evolving, that's going to either decipher whether you grow from it or whether, you find more hatred for yourself and go deeper down the road you don't probably want to go down. It really does come down to how you relate to all these different parts that you are going to start to discover as you go through this process and as life takes you on a journey. I was talking to a client the other day, and we were talking about self-trust, and she was talking about how she was really struggling to trust herself, right? To make decisions that were right, essentially, is what it came down to. Like, I don't trust myself to make the right decision. And so many people, I think, can relate to this. They think they don't have self-trust because when the opportunity arises to do the thing that I know I need to do or that I should do, I oftentimes don't do it. And so I can't trust myself. And the conversation that I brought her into and the reframe that I want to invite you all into, because I think it's so important and necessary to actually implement any of this, is reframing what self-trust actually looks like. Because self-trust is not about being perfect. Self-trust is not about always making the right choice. If that were the case, I don't know if you'd ever get to a place where you truly trust yourself. Because again, that's implying that you're not human, that you're not flawed, that you don't have subconscious patterns and shadows and beliefs and like behaviors that you're here to work through in this life. Like, we are imperfect for a reason, because that is the journey of being human that makes this game actually worth playing. Again, you would never watch a movie that doesn't have any conflict. Then there's nothing to work towards. It reminds me of a quote by Peter Crone that says, "Please never become perfect. You'll have no one to relate to." So, putting that into perspective, self-trust is not about never messing up. It's not about being perfect. That sets the bar so high that you are bound to fail. And now you're just giving yourself more evidence to support the story that you're somehow broken or flawed. But you're not. Everyone is. Everyone is human, and it doesn't mean you're broken. True self-trust is not abandoning yourself when you do make a quote-unquote mistake, or when you stumble, or when you say something stupid, or when a shadow part of you takes over, or when you hide a part of yourself. Literally any time that your human does something very human, if you can learn how to make space for that, and how to stay, and how not to beat yourself up over it, that's what creates self-trust. The way that I want you to think about it is, how would you create trust with a friend, someone you really love? Because I guarantee you it's not by never making a mistake, never saying something that you regret, never falling short. That's impossible. That's literally not, that person doesn't exist. And don't strive for that, because you're going to fall short. Instead, self-trust is like, oh, I'm showing up even when I mess up. It's about how quickly can I come back and make amends and apologize? How quickly can I own my mistakes? Can I stay when it's hard, when it's ugly? Can you trust that I will show up no matter what? That is trust. And that's the kind of trust that is needed for this journey. That's the kind of trust that builds such a solid foundation internally, from which you can continue to improve and go on this human journey without all the fear and the anxiety and the overwhelm and the need to control and the internal conflict of just constantly feeling like you're not good enough. to create a life that fully feels like yours. Like all of these pieces come from a place of internal trust. Like I've got myself, not because I'm perfect or because I'm never going to make a mistake, but because even if I do, I'm not going anywhere. And again, that's why this work is powerful, because it teaches you, wait, here's why you can actually trust that, because you understand where it's coming from. You recognize that there's actually like good intent behind all of who you are, even the parts that you think are so wrong. So I want to share a story with you that is vulnerable and that is real, but is exactly what I mean by this. And it was a really profound and healing moment for me because it showed me how far I've come. Because you guys, I promise that I was so not like this growing up. I was the complete opposite. And that's why I speak about this journey of coming home to yourself, and building self-trust and like embracing all of who you are without guilt and judgment and shame. Just like releasing yourself of that grip that like, oh, that just like suffocates your expression and your heart and your joy, because I did not feel that way. I was suffocating myself with all the self-judgment and the self-hatred and the constant feeling of like, there's parts of you that are so wrong and so bad, and so you need to do better and you need to pretend and you need to, it's this constant like, oh my God, if only people knew. Was a prison that I lived in for a long time. And so much of this work for me has been allowing myself to find liberation and like, whoa, I'm actually a good human. We all are. And there's just parts that are normal, that are human. And underneath all of them are just a little kid who is hurt or scared. That's it. You would never judge a little kid for being hurt. Even if the kid acted out of anger, underneath anger is just a lot of hurt. So we have coping mechanisms that have come online that we don't like, that we judge, but underneath is it's just humanness. It's humanity. It's innocence, really. Okay, so back to my story. Like I said, I used to judge myself a lot. And I still sometimes do. Like I'm human, but I've come a really long way. And I catch myself a lot sooner and I can reframe things a lot faster. And that's why I'm like, keep going. Let me share this work with you because it is life-changing. Anyway, coming back, I was working through a deep shadow. I noticed myself hiding a truth from my partner that was not okay. And I felt so much shame because I was like, this isn't who I am. Like, why did I lie about that? Why did I not tell the truth about that? And yeah, it really confronted me with my own shadow that I just talked about, right? This shadow of essentially, I recognized is a part of me that felt really unsafe growing up. I felt really unsafe to say the truth at times. And we don't have to get into all the details, but that was my personal experience. It's not about what was actually true. It's about how your experience internally. So no, you don't have to go validate your experience. It's whatever you felt, that was your experience. And that's what's still playing out, right? And so I felt unsafe to tell my truth when I was younger. And I started to really recognize this, and it brought a lot of compassion and still, at the same time, holding the truth of like, okay, this has impact and consequences, and I get to do better and I want to do better. And how will I do better? But before I got to that place, I first had to feel the shame that came with it. A lot of self-judgment, a lot of shame, a lot of anger. And this is why people are scared to go in, because they're like, I don't want to face that. I don't want to dig into the trenches because I'm going to find a lot of shit. And it's like, yeah, you will. But you have the capacity to be with it. And on the other side is a lot of gold. Is so much gold and so much love and so much growth. And it's like, it's absolutely worth it every time. Okay. I'm going off into the weeds, but all of these feelings came up when it first happened. It's like you open Pandora's box and it's like just floods with all this shame and all this like ickiness of like, this isn't who I am. Like, where's this coming from? Why did I do that? I regret it. I wish I blah, 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 blah. And shame also coming up from like my whole life of like, how many times have I not told the truth in little ways? And for me, a lot of it was like just staying quiet instead of speaking up. It's just like it shows up differently for everyone, but still, like, that doesn't feel good because you in your own consciousness know what's true. And so even if no one ever finds out, like, we carry that energy within us and it does have consequences, even if we don't notice them. And so in order to fully feel like you've nothing to prove and nothing to hide and be authentic and be free, like, literally my body has felt so much freer since just embracing these parts and doing the work to show up differently and to hold space for all of them. But in that moment, I felt so many uncomfortable feelings come up. So many. And I had to look at pieces of myself that I was just not proud of and that I have deemed unlovable, unacceptable. That's why I've hidden them for so long. And in the moment of the depth of my shame and guilt and just self-judgment, I heard a voice in the back of my head, some higher part of me, that said, I won't abandon you. And I just broke down crying. I think I was already crying, but I really started bawling in that moment because I've never really spoken to myself in that way, especially when I'm in the depths. It's easier to be loving towards yourself when you're feeling good, but it's hard when you're feeling not good, especially around shame. Shame is such a deep emotion of like, you are bad. Like, you are a messed up person. And of course, it's like no one is. And even that part is like, it thinks that by attacking you, you are going to improve. And that strategy just isn't effective long term. And it also sucks. Like, actually, what if you could heal by just being a lot nicer to yourself and understanding where these parts come from and making space for them and leaning in and like working with them instead of fighting them? That's a much different experience. Anyway, and more effective. So to hear that in my own head from myself in that moment was so transformative because I was like, wow, this is what I've needed. Like, this pattern came online because I was so afraid of being abandoned. And so in that moment, to hear that from myself, like, even in the parts of you that you think are most unlovable, I still love you and I'm not going anywhere. I still see the truth of who you are. I still see you're good. And we've got this. We're going to work through this. That kind of like self-support, it's life-changing. It's truly life-changing. Because I'm like, when I have that kind of relationship with myself, there's nothing I can't face. Like, literally bring on any challenge and I'm like, okay, it's going to suck, probably. And like, that's unavoidable. Like, there's a lot to look at. We've got some deep shit as humans, but it doesn't mean we are that. We are still the soul underneath all of it that is pure, that is loving, that is doing the best it can. But we are human and we've been taught, not only have we been taught by society things that are very inaccurate and just very ineffective ways of being human that we are learning how to break free from and repattern, which that alone is like, goodness, give yourself some grace. But on top of that, most of us have experienced a lot of fucking trauma and a lot of pain and a lot of hurtful experiences. And so it makes sense that we have these protection mechanisms of hiding, of not telling our truth, of being defensive, of being reactive, of isolating, of literally, you name it, all these human patterns that seem wrong and messed up. But are they? Are they when you understand where they're coming from? Are they when you recognize that underneath all of it is just a little kid who's terrified, who's been so hurt, who's just so scared of doing it wrong, of being abandoned? And this is the coping mechanism that it used before it knew better, before it had conscious choice to be like, oh, this is how I'm going to cope with this. No, these patterns just happened. And when the shame dissolves, it's like, oh, okay, now we can work through this. Here's what we're going to do differently. Here's how I'm going to hold the part of me. And this has been a lot of my work. It's like me holding little Lilly, who in moments of contraction, of hiding, of like shying away from truth, even if it's hard to say, even if it's hard to confront, even if it's risky and might cause rejection, like, can I be with the part of me that is scared in that moment and still show up in the way that I know I can and I know I want to? That's how we repattern things. That's how we grow. That's how we heal. It requires that self-love, that self-acceptance. And this is why I do the work that I do. This is why I created the home program. And I'm absolutely going to plug that here because I can't not share this offer with you guys. With women who relate to this, with women who feel like they have been in such conflict with themselves their whole lives, who've been so hard on themselves. Like, that is the thing that's blocking you from becoming the person you want to be. It's not your looks. It's not the money in your bank account. It's not what you are or aren't doing. It's none of that. And yet we've spent so much time and effort trying to fix those things outside of ourselves in order to finally feel worthy and loved and safe. It's exhausting. I've been there. I get it. And like, I'm here to tell you that actually it's coming home to yourself. It's creating an internal relationship with yourself that is so rooted in trust, so rooted in acceptance, because you get it. You understand what it means to be human, and you understand how to work with the thoughts and work with the feelings, which is all what I teach you inside of this home program. When you understand how to navigate your human experience with more love and compassion and trust and acceptance, everything else becomes easier. Everything. And your health gets better as a result, because guess what? Disease comes from dis-ease. When you are in conflict with yourself, when you are mean to yourself, when you are in judgment and shame and guilt and hiding yourself, like, literally think about the feeling that causes in your body. This was my story. So much stress. It's literally the opposite of health, right? And so there's a natural healing that comes physically and internally when you just soften, because the shame and the guilt and the pressure and the freaking hatred dissolves a little bit. And so this is what I teach you inside of the home program. And for those of you who don't know, home is a 12-week group journey for women where, in sisterhood, in an intimate container, we go through this experience where we really reconnect with ourselves. We work through mind. We understand how your mind works, how to actually move through anxious thoughts, and understand why the mind is trying to protect you, which again changes the way you relate to it. And when you're not fighting it, it feels a lot easier to navigate. So we go through the mental realm, then we go through the body. We look at emotions, like, how do you actually work through triggers? How do you make space for bigger emotions? How do you let that energy move through without making it mean something about yourself? And then lastly, we reconnect to yourself on a spiritual level. Like, remember who you are. You are not any of your patterns. You are none of these shadows. You are none of these parts. You are not this meat suit. You are not the reflection in the mirror. You are the awareness within, the spirit within. And that spirit is so unique and so full of joy and so pure and so loving. And the more that you actually take time to reconnect to that and build your intuition and start to live your life from that place, life gets really magical, really, really meaningful, really deep, really beautiful, because it's true to you. And it just feels so liberating. So I'm going to leave you with the question of, where have you been trying to be good instead of be whole? And what if nothing about you is actually wrong, just waiting to be met with love, waiting for your own approval, waiting for your own love? Those are the questions that I want you to sit with And if you are interested and want to learn more about the home program, which is launching again at the end of August 2025, just reach out to me. Reach out to me on Instagram. I'm going to put my handle in the show notes below. Send me a DM and let's just talk. I want to see if this feels like a good fit for you. And I want to hear where you're at. I love building connections. I want to know about you. Truly, it means the world to me. So that is where you can find me. And other than that, thank you for listening to me speak for an hour on this. I hope that you got something out of it. And I hope that you, through my stories and through my expression, and hopefully the love that you can feel through my words, I hope that it allows you to soften into your human experience and to recognize that there's nothing wrong with you and that it's hard to be human and that we have so many parts that we're not even aware of that are still playing such a deep role. Our subconscious it influences 95% of who we are. From our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, our actions. That literally means 95% of who you are on a day-to-day life, like on a day-to-day basis, is completely unknown. It's unconscious. And that doesn't make it bad. But the more we shine a light, the more that we're willing to open those doors and look inside from a place of love and compassion and curiosity, the more that these pieces and patterns dissolve and they no longer have this grip over us. And we feel more liberated as a result. We feel lighter in our bodies. We feel more beautiful in our skin. We feel more confident. We trust life more. We feel more connected to ourselves and others. I mean, everything gets better, truly. So that is my wish for you. You know where to find me. I also do one-on-one coaching if you want a more personalized experience and if you're ready to go deeper. This is a place for women to really go deeper. Truly, if you want a more personalized experience for yourself, then that is what I would invite you to explore. There's options for you, and I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work that changes lives, starting with yourself. And yeah, I'm right here with you. Ciao for now.